Hello, I'm Alexandra Johnston and I'm an Associate Lecturer with the Williams Centre for Learning Advancement at the University of Melbourne. Thank you for the opportunity to share my research with you all today. Having recently published my systematic literature review in Heard, it's a real privilege to share the initial findings from my PhD study. It's called Investigating the Link Between Peer Review of Teaching and Scholarly Teaching in Higher Education. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll give you a glimpse of the initial findings from this case study. I'll take you through the implications for practice. You'll have the opportunity to ask me any questions, and I've included my contact details at the end of this presentation. I'd love to hear from you, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Let's begin with an overview. In this research, I'm aiming to identify teaching academics' experiences of a peer review of teaching program and examine how these experiences can evidence teaching quality development through fostering scholarly approaches to teaching. The main research question I have guiding this study is, how does engagement in peer review of teaching influence academics' scholarly teaching? Now, to address that question, I asked my participants these three sub-questions. What are your experiences of peer review of teaching? And what do you perceive to have changed in your teaching as a result of having engaged in peer review of teaching? And what role do you think peer review has in the development of scholarly teaching for academics? The key terms within this study sit more broadly in the scholarship of teaching and learning literature. These definitions that you can see here are working definitions. Some of these are highly contested, but nonetheless, they form helpful foundations for this research. And I'll just touch on these very briefly. So this idea of peer review of teaching, one of those highly contested terms, but focusing for this study on this idea of that we engage in a continuing professional development practice, if you like, where teaching academics provide feedback on each other's teaching in order to be able to improve the quality of our teaching. Teaching quality then also deserves a bit of a look in here. It's where we're engaging in these pedagogical or andragogical processes, if you like. I've given a couple of examples of those here, but all to the end of achieving student learning outcomes. And this idea of scholarly teaching is where we're using evidence-based approaches in our teaching that are grounded in the scholarly literature. Touching on the research design very briefly, social constructionism is the epistemological foundation for my research. Now, this epistemology situates theory building as a process of interacting with the interpretations and understandings of both myself as a researcher and my sample, where reality I'm viewing is socially constructed and certainly not value-free. I use a case study method combined with constructivist grounded theory methodology. The figure you can see here illustrates the theoretical framework for the study. And here, peer review of teaching is understood as a teaching development input within higher education, where a number of factors can influence scholarly teaching development. Those factors were identified through the findings of both the systematic review and the study. This figure shows the case study design. The larger circle you can see here signifies the bounded setting of the large Australian university. It also signifies peer review of teaching as a phenomenon of the study. The smaller circles you can see represent the multiple cases. There were 7 faculties and 31 participants across those faculties. Now, within these smaller circles, we've got 4 HASS faculties, Humanities, Arts and Social Science, and 3 STEM faculties, Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics. There was a 2-tiered approach to peer review in this context. Tier 1 was led by departments at a local level, and Tier 2 was a cross-university program led by the Central Teaching and Learning Unit at the university. In this next section, I'll take a pragmatic approach to peer review with a focus on the richness of the educator's experience. I'll then offer a view of peer review of teaching that promotes a responsive approach by tailoring programs to the requirements of the academics within the context in which they teach. I'll first discuss the factors of the study that were in alignment with the systematic review findings. This systematic review was published in October 2020 in Heard, and I'm really happy to share that with you, so please contact me if you're interested. The red circle you can see here indicates where these factors sit within the theoretical framework. I used a methodologically inclusive research synthesis for the review, which showed teaching development outcomes gained through the peer review of teaching programs span factors at the organisational, program and individual levels. This figure represents thematic factors from the study in alignment with the systematic review, as I mentioned. Now, organisational factors are defined as attributes within organisations that support teaching development to occur. The organisation, to a larger degree, determines how the program will be led within various disciplinary cultures and contextually specific requirements. Factors at the organisational level included the clear and transparent communication of leadership, context of the discipline, and level of organisational collegiality. Program factors are defined as the overall structure of the program and the design of the various components. These factors are central to determining program engagement and achieving teaching development outcomes. Program factors included the peer review framework, such as whether it was mandated or voluntary, the design of the program, such as whether there were training modules in how to observe, how to provide feedback, and how to engage in reflective practice, and whether there were elements included in the program, such as pre-meetings and post-meetings to support teaching development conversations, for example. Now, individual factors are defined as individuals' unique, inherent characteristics that might influence their experience of a peer review of teaching program. There was a dearth of factors reported at the individual level. Where they were reported, these factors included the prior experience of academics and their perceived development requirements. For example, if they perceived the peer review program was in alignment with their teaching development needs, academics were more likely to engage with it. So no surprises there. This figure represents the findings from the study additional to those that were in alignment with the systematic review. Academics are better equipped to action and apply adjustments to their teaching and therefore experience development in their scholarly teaching when they have access to opportunities to continuously improve. This includes developing an understanding of the importance of actively engaging in a continuous improvement cycle. And that cycle involves engaging in formal learning about teaching, which then has implications for academics developing a language to talk about their teaching, integrating evidence-based research about their teaching in their practice, and focusing on student learning and engagement. Now, scholarly teaching is continuously improvable, and peer review of teaching serves as a mechanism to monitor teaching quality, which is inextricably linked to our practice with the continual work of improving or enhancing our teaching. Academics' engagement in peer review promotes teaching enhancement, conceptual growth, and ongoing teaching transformation, which indicates there is a direct relationship between conceptual expansion and enhanced teaching pedagogy gained through peer review participation. However, and this is closing the loop here on all of the factors, it's when academics experience leadership messaging based on a cultural expectation of participation that they're more likely to engage in peer review as a process of continuous improvement, which entails active engagement in making adjustments to their teaching. So what supports and sustains these factors? I argue there are enabling processes occurring in this context that support and sustain these factors. The red circle indicates where the enabling processes sit within the theoretical framework. This figure illustrates the enabling processes in peer review of teaching that support the development of scholarly teaching capabilities. In identifying opportunities to develop scholarly teaching through peer review, active engagement in the peer review process entails sense-making with a peer through the observation, feedback, and reflection cycle, and using this to inform their future teaching. Discourse with a peer focused on scholarly development that is meaningful within the teaching context may enable academics to take subsequent action and make adjustments to their teaching. Notwithstanding this, though, to fully realise and integrate information generated through a scholarly teaching discourse, academics need specific strategies to act constructively, and central to this is engagement in that discourse as well as engagement in reflective practice. The development of scholarly teaching capabilities requires academics to take action and apply their learnings in their future teaching through continuous improvement. Where academics engage in these enabling processes, they may be more likely to develop the skills, knowledge and behaviours, or scholarly teaching capabilities, and apply their learnings constructively and meaningfully for their future teaching. So what does this all mean for practice? Peer review of teaching can be a mix of different approaches across different teaching contexts. There is not one size that fits all. This presents a challenge to understanding the type of peer review required according to the individual and the teaching environment. Given this challenge, I'm proposing a simple tool that can assist us here. Radar charts, also referred to as spider graphs. Radar charts are defined as graphs with multiple scales that are used to report self-assessed capabilities. Graphic measurements can be compared over time to monitor changes or growth across the chosen capabilities. Radar charts are commonly used in the field of organisational development to measure quality. In higher education, these charts have been used to document teaching performance, which makes this a tool well suited to support our assessment of teaching quality development. Here we have a selection of 5 of the scholarly teaching capabilities identified through thematic analysis: collegiality, observation, reflection, continuous improvement, and student focus. Now, as well as a tool for documenting changes in scholarly teaching capabilities over time, these charts show scholarly teaching capabilities across 3 academic profiles based on 3 de-identified study participants and their different experiences of scholarly teaching capabilities. Ruby, coded in blue here, is a senior lecturer teaching in a HASS context, such as an education faculty, for example. Adhana, coded in orange, is a professor teaching in a STEM context, such as a science faculty. Tan, coded in grey, is a level A academic teaching in a HASS context, such as a business faculty. Here is Ruby's radar chart, our HASS senior lecturer. The shaded area represents the amount and dimensions of scholarly teaching experienced within the context of the peer review program. Here is the representation of the scholarly teaching capabilities of Adhana, our senior professor teaching in STEM. Now, this chart is a little fuller, if you like, forming the pentagon shape. It's also a little more skewed to the left than that of Ruby's chart, focusing and showing more of a student focus. And the scholarly teaching capabilities of Tan, the level A academic teaching in HASS or the business faculty, for example. Here the chart is skewed further to the left, indicating a stronger student focus again. We can use radar charts to better understand scholarly teaching capabilities and the implications of developing these capabilities through peer review of teaching. For example, when setting up a peer review observation pairing, Ruby may choose to be matched with someone who has a strong student focus in order to deliberately engage in building that capability with their peer review partner. In another context, 2 academics high in continuous improvement capabilities might be identified as expert continuous improvement reviewers for the purpose of building that capability across a team. We're looking here for strengths and not weaknesses. These findings offer a framework for developing a conceptualisation of how peer review of teaching can support the development of scholarly teaching capabilities. I'm proposing that the completed data analysis may provide an insight into important capabilities that academics enact within peer review of teaching that contribute to scholarly teaching development. For any questions or to chat further, please contact me on this email address. I'd love to chat with you further.